In today's episode, we're sitting down with TJ O'Connor, president of Farmington Consulting Group, to unpack real data from the Contractor of the Future study and what it reveals about the HVAC businesses that are growing faster, selling more premium solutions, and improving profitability. Let's get started.
Welcome back to another episode of HVAC Full Blast. I'm going to keep trying to say that really fun and enthusiastic. Stephen, what do you think?
You're doing a great job. That's why we have you kick off the episode every time, because you're really peppy. I get excited. I'm ready for it to start.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I don't know what to do with my hands. Anyway, I'm Mary Carter. He's Stephen Ross. And today we have an amazing guest. Stephen, why don't you introduce our guest today?
Well, TJ, we thought we would ask you to introduce yourself. I'm excited to have you on. Mary's excited to have you on. We know who you are, but our listeners may not know who you are. Here's a way. I think this is fascinating. Here's what I think is fascinating. I don't know who your competitors are. And in any other vertical within the HVAC industry, off the top of my head, I can name 3 or 4 companies in that space that are all competitors. And when I think about you and what your company does, I wouldn't even know who else to call. You're that unique within the heating and air industry. So with that said, why don't you kind of introduce yourself? Who are you? Tell us a little bit about Farmington Consulting, and then just how did you even get into it? But let's just start with who are you and what do you guys do?
Yeah, I appreciate the introduction, the invite, and being called unique. That's certainly a good thing. I could be called a lot worse things. So, TJ O'Connor, President, Farmington Consulting Group. As Stephen mentioned, we've kind of carved out a specific niche in the industry. So we work not only in the heating and air industry, but also in the plumbing and electrical industries, conducting market research. So we do all types of research and surveys and interviews of contractors, of manufacturers, just trying to provide the industries that we work in with some really good intel and information. Specific to HVAC, we work with distributors, we work with manufacturers. I'm actually in San Antonio right now, just got done presenting a customer satisfaction survey results that we conducted for a distributor down here in the great state of Texas. But we've been doing this study in the HVAC industry with HVAC contractors over the past 6 years that we've titled the Contractor of the Future study. And every fall we go out and we pull HVAC contractors of all different shapes and sizes, trying to really get their thoughts on what's changing in the industry, how are they adapting their business to fit the needs of their customer, and just what are they doing from a forward-looking best practice standpoint to be the most successful HVAC contractor in their market. And so, as you guys well know, it's a great industry to work in. My dad started our company back in 1982 doing like job costing for electrical contractors in New England. I came on board about 17 years ago, and my task from my dad was to broaden out into the mechanical industries to become an expert in plumbing and HVAC. And so that's kind of how I got started. And like you said, don't really have much competition, which is a good spot to be in. But yeah, have a lot of fun working with different contractors, distributors, manufacturers throughout heating and air.
That's amazing. I just have to fangirl for a moment because I first was introduced to the Contractor of the Future study, I want to say it was maybe 3 years ago. And a friend of the show and listener, Mary Beth Kime, had sent me a portion of the survey that was relating to a program that I was overseeing at the time with consumer finance. And the statistics were things that we had been saying, but they were real numbers for me to back up behavior within the program. And I remember emailing Mary Beth and just being like, where did this come from? And so she sent me a little bit more about the full deck. And now every year when it comes out, I get so excited because the insights from this presentation are incredibly in-depth and extremely relatable for honestly heating and air, but really home services, to your point, and all the verticals that you're serving.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And yeah, we try to, present data as one thing, but kind of the why behind it is another that we really try to focus on. And so glad to get feedback that you've found value in the work that we do.
I'm kind of in the same boat, which is having been doing sales training since 2011. I'm getting old now. The gray hair is starting to show. But it is very validating to when you've been saying the same thing, like, hey, contractors, we need to kind of shift over here. And then there's some data that comes out. And most of the data, when I started doing sales training in 2011, was non-industry specific. So there was research out there and data out there that you could pull from and kind of extrapolate out to say, okay, well, based on this research, here's what we should be doing to reach consumers. But it's phenomenal to have industry specific research that also backs that up. So I very much appreciate it. Can we just to clarify, so you're in Texas right now, a distributor hired you to go out and survey their clients who are mechanical contractors so that their distributor then could take the information and figure out how to do a better job servicing their customers. Is that that's one level of the research that you do? Is that right?
Yeah, that's a big part of what we do. We do a lot of research for manufacturers. Maybe they're coming out with a new product or, an existing product that they want to get feedback from the channel on. So yeah, any kind of information, intel. I mean, companies can always ask themselves, they could do it themselves, but a lot of people find value in having a third party that's, instilled in the industry, can be kind of that objective partner and provide some feedback that way. So yeah, that's really what we do.
And then the second part of that is what Mary was talking about, which is you also just survey nationwide contractors to distill down best practices to say, hey, what is it that these top tier contractors are doing that differentiates them from some of the rest of the industry? Is that a good kind of summary? Because that's what I think we're going to talk about today. Is that?
Yeah, it's an industry-wide project that we've taken on kind of pro bono, for lack of better terms, to provide the industry with insights. I mean, our industry is moving so rapidly and changing. And I mean, whether you talk about A2L and SEER2 or the rebate changes, private equity, succession planning, I mean, it's just moving so fast. Not to kind of beat down on the plumbing industry, but we also work in the plumbing industry. And the rate that industry is changing is like snail's pace, right? HVAC is just so fascinating to me. And so contractors that are adapting and are looking forward are the ones that are taking share and are going to be successful. And the ones that aren't and are kind of like, well, this is how we've always done things. This is how, my dad did it or whoever I took the business for. Those situations, those processes don't necessarily work today in an ever-changing environment. So, the questions that we ask on our survey every year to contractors changes, the feedback that we get changes. There's obviously some staples in there, but yeah, it's really interesting work for sure.
If you want to get an instant eye roll out of me, just say that's the way we've always done things. Without fail, I will just okay.
So peel back the onion. Like how many contractors did you survey all over the country? I mean, just who's the base that you're pulling? Can you tell us a little bit about that? Who are you getting the data from?
Yeah. So we completed our survey this past fall, and we had completed surveys from over 1,000 different HVAC contractors all throughout the country, all different shapes and sizes. So from your chuck in the truck, one-man operation to your large commercial mechanical contractor that has 50 trucks and vehicles. Ones that are focused on the resi market, ones that are focused on commercial, ones that have been in business for a long time, ones that are new startups, and as you said, throughout the country, and representing a variety of different manufacturers. So it's very equally weighted throughout the different parts of the HVAC industry.
Nice. Well, Mary, can I tell you what Mary wants to talk about first?
Absolutely.
Can we just like consumer financing? Can we start there? So here's what's interesting is, and I'm a sales trainer, and then I want to hear kind of what Mary's thoughts are. But when I go in to talk to maybe a contractor that doesn't offer financing or doesn't offer it much, the thing that we hear, as Mary mentioned, is, well, hey, we've always done it this way. That's kind of the first thing. And then they say, hey, our customers don't need financing. And so, whether it's me or it's Mary or it's somebody from Wells Fargo, we're like, hey, here's the pie chart of consumers. And when you say my customers don't need financing, what you're saying is I only want customers out of this little sliver of the pie chart. But give us the data. Like, what's the data actually say? Well, let me ask Mary. Mary, can I start with Mary? Because this is your world, Mary. This is your passion. I mean, what have you seen? Well, let me just turn it over to you.
Yeah. So you're right. The first thing we always hear is my customers don't need financing. And I was actually, if I could tell you a story, I never get to say that.
Yes.
I was out in New York doing some dealer recruitment events last week and brought up consumer financing and how we have a wonderful partnership. And right away, dealer hand in the air. Yeah, not for nothing, but none of my customers need financing. And I did a different tactic than I've ever done before. And I said, you did it. Kind of like think like Buddy the Elf in Elf. And I was like, you did it. You found all the customers that have cash. You found them all. And congrats. I mean, your customers are just flush with cash. You did it. And he kind of looked at me like, is she crazy? And but my exact point was, no, sir, you didn't. You didn't do that. And in fact, you're just losing out on those customers who, would have considered you had you offered a compelling monthly payment. So that is definitely the experience. And what we actually see is that when customers are offered a compelling monthly payment, they will consider you or at least go forward with some sort of an application. And then the close rate of customers who go through the application process far exceeds those who were never, offered a compelling monthly payment in the first place. So I will let TJ speak to the exact numbers, but we see that time and time and time again.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And, another thing to piggyback on that is that when most people think of financing for consumers, they only think of, well, the consumer that doesn't have cash to pay for it. But I'll tell you what, even your wealthier homeowners, let's say, those people take advantage of financing when it's offered to them as much as the people that don't have the cash on hand, right? People who have the money, and I say this to contractors, they say, well, I service a wealthy area. My customers don't need that. They just write me a check. And it's like, well, some of the reasons why those people are wealthy is because they like to invest their money, right? Like they like to spend what they call other people's money. So I haven't heard a reasonable argument from any contractor of why not to offer financing. Is it for every single customer? Maybe not. But I am a strong believer that consumer financing is the most valuable tool that an HVAC contractor has at their tool belt. Unfortunately, it's also the most underutilized in a lot of cases. So I'll share some data with you. I'll also share a quick story as Mary did, because I like stories too. But 68% of HVAC contractors nationally state that they offer financing of some sort, right? But when you tear back the onion a little bit, the reality is only 37% of heating and air contractors offer financing on every single job. Wow. And that's really what they should be doing, because you have a lot of contractors that say, well, yeah, it's in small print on my website, or I have one of my technicians that has bought it and they promote it, but the other ones are afraid to talk about it. So really only a third of our contractors in our industry are really promoting it. It's part of their culture. They're leading with a monthly payment and so on. And to your point, Mary, I could talk about it till I'm red in the face. You could do the same, but to have some data to back it up, contractors who offer financing always on every job, not just sometimes when they feel the customer might want it, their close rates increase substantially. So our data shows from our Contractor of the Future study that contractors that only offer financing some of the time, their close rates on average are 38%. Contractors who always offer financing every single job, that goes up to 49%. That's pretty significant, right? And that's not like a major investment that contractors have to make. Yet they have to train their staff, get them comfortable bringing it up. But if you as a contractor could go from a 38% average close rate up to almost 50%, to me, that's pretty low-hanging fruit. Not only do the close rates increase, but the mix equipment-wise for the contractor improves. It gets away from having so much on that entry-level base equipment that so many contractors sell so much of, and gets more into that mid-tier and higher tier equipment, which obviously contractors want to sell more of, distributors want to sell more of, manufacturers want to sell more of. And the thing that I hear from so many HVAC contractors is, well, I don't offer financing because my customer doesn't need it, they don't want it. But we all know if you don't offer someone something, an option, a payment option in this case, you're going to have no chance of selling it. So even if a small portion of your customer base takes advantage of financing, that's still raising your close rate, raising your margins, raising your equipment mix, selling add-ons. I mean, there's so much good that can come from it. So, we published in our Contractor of the Future report, like the top best practices around financing. They are partnering with a private financing company. You mentioned Wells Fargo. There's a lot of good ones out there. Integrating a second look option. So I hear from contractors, I can't get a lot of my customers approved. Well, do you have a second look option that helps in that circumstance? And a lot of companies that do that. As I mentioned, always offering financing on every job, not just some of the time. And leading with a monthly payment is so key. Most contractors, over 3/4, wait until the end of their proposal or their sales presentation to say, hey, here's the cost of the total system, but if you want, we could try to get you approved for financing. And if that's the case, this is their monthly payment. No, right? When you or I go to buy or lease a car, they don't come out and say, well, the vehicle costs $50,000. If they're a good salesperson, they say, well, this could be, $670 a month, Mr. O'Connor, right? And if you want to add on service to that, or you want to add on this to that, it's going to raise it by $10 a month. And that's not that bad. And so our world works under financing. The HVAC industry, unfortunately, is just slow to catch up to that. But there absolutely are contractors in each market that are taking share from the non-progressive contractors that have already bought in. And also offering different promotional financing, right? There's financing options, promotional options that work for consumers of all different types depending on their financial situation. And even though I use the term financing, we let off with that, affordable payment option is really the term that should be utilized when a contractor is talking to their customer.
One of the things that we talk about at Sandler is we use a term that we call not okay. And that is that you don't ever want to kind of backhandedly insult your customer, because that obviously is going to hurt, right? And that's what you see with the contractors who are like, hey, here's the price of this system. It's $18,396. But if you're broke as crap, Mr. O'Connor, we could offer you some financing. And that's how that, if you wait till the end, that's how that comes across. It's insulting. So it's, my niche of the heating and air industry is really working on the technique. It's not just should you offer financing, but how you offer financing matters enormously if you're trying to get that full 10% bump in your closing ratio.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And with inflation continuing, the cost of an average system going up, I mean, it's more important now than ever. And I would think for a lot of, especially homeowners, you talk about the residential contractor, if you just lead with the overall price of a new system, they're going to say, well, just repair it, right? Just repair. And we all know that A, you can only repair so long. B, for a contractor to be really successful, you want to get more into that replace, right? In a new system. And so I think to your point, you want to start off on more of a positive and something that consumer and customer can afford and they could see themselves paying it, rather than, like you said, $18,000 system when maybe they weren't even expecting that they would have to replace their system. And so, the quick story I want to share to piggyback on Mary is, so I present this information at a lot of different dealer meetings throughout the year, right? Manufacturer, distributor will have a dealer meetings, bring their top customers in. They have me come in and talk about contractor best practices and where the industry is going. And I always talk about financing because it's huge in our industry. And I did this in a very rural area a couple of years ago. And they didn't throw anything at me, but the contractors in the audience, when I told them that they had to get on board on financing, did not take kindly to what I was saying. And they, asked questions and picked apart, you don't understand these financing companies, that, they're frauds and we can't get our customers approved. Our customers don't need them, all this stuff, right? So afterwards, there was like a cocktail hour and I'm standing there and a rather younger contractor, well-dressed guy came up to me and he goes, when you were talking about financing and how that is the way our industry is going, and I was listening to my competitors disagree with you and basically tell you you're wrong, I was just sitting there loving it, because those are the people that I'm taking market share of, and my close rates have gone through the roof. I'm selling more premium equipment, and I'm taking business from my competitors that don't offer it, right? Because just, the last thing I'll say about it is people like options, no matter what it is. Options on payment, options on different types of products, you name it. And if you don't offer it, you don't have the chance to sell it. And so we need to get more contractors bought on board with that.
I love it. So there's two pathways I want to go down here from the financing conversation. And one you mentioned is that the increase in mix will occur with more compelling monthly payment options. And therefore, profitability has a chance to rise as well, right? And one of my big takeaways from the survey this year was the correlations between small activities you can do in the business and profitability, whether that be marketing budget, offering financing options. And so I was just wondering if maybe you could speak to that, because I think there is a little bit of a sentiment in the market that, wow, these manufacturers are getting away with highway robbery. Like, the prices are going up and consumers are feeling it. And how do I stay profitable? How do I get some of that, right? So I'm very curious to take, your take on what you're seeing in the numbers from a profitability standpoint.
Yeah. So a couple numbers and then some color behind it. Our study shows that the average heating and air contractor across the country has a net profit at the end of the year of plus 6%. You look at that and you're like, well, they're making money, right? But our data and experience shows that really that should be at 10% or higher. In order for a contractor to sustain growth at a time, invest in their business, which not enough contractors do, that net profit should be at 10% or more. So how do you get there, right? And financing is certainly one way to do that. Investing in marketing. Our study shows that contractors that invest at least 12% of their annual revenue back into marketing and advertising to create more leads, create a brand for their business, have a much higher net profit at the end of the year than those that do not. So I think that is a huge one. But on the pricing, so many contractors complain about price increase, and I get it, right? It does make things harder. But that same consumer, whether it's residential or commercial, that bought a system at $12,000 5 years ago, that's the same person that's going to buy a system now at $16,000, right? Dollars. Heating and air is not the only industry and part of life that prices have increased in, right? I don't know anything that prices haven't gone up with. And so everyone has become accustomed to paying more for something. And as a contractor, to be successful, contractors need to focus a lot more on the value that they provide in their own brand, rather than just, well, the price of equipment is this, and so I've got to lower my costs, and I can only sell 14 SEER and all this stuff. Those are just excuses. And so there's so many things that contractors can do to differentiate themselves. Financing is one. Offering extended labor warranties as part of their total job is another one. Marketing themselves. I'm sure you're going to ask me down the road, but I think this is a good point to put in there about proposals and how contractors present options and proposals to their customers, right? So, the good, better, best, or however you term it and however you put it, that has been like historically thought of by the industry as that's the best practice, right? We give 3 options. We give them a cheap option, kind of the mid-tier option, and then your high option, right? And what data shows is that people usually will eliminate that top option just off the board. Not everyone, but a lot of consumers will eliminate that top option. So one of the questions we asked on our survey to HVAC contractors is, how do you present proposals to your customers, and how many options do you provide them? Not just in efficiency of product, but also in payment options. And even though not many contractors have adopted this, the contractors who offer 4 or more options to their customers when they present a proposal, their profitability is double what the profitability is of those that offer 1, 2, or even 3 options. And so again, it sounds simple, but the more options you provide to your customers, the better. And so that's a way I think that contractors can differentiate themselves and lead to more profitability. And again, to Stephen's point, even if you're only going to get 5% of your customers to buy that 4th option, that pie in the sky, right? That's still a heck of a lot more than you were doing before. So leads to higher premium equipment mix, higher close rates when you give more option, higher profitability for the contractor.
I feel like we're hitting our love languages. Like
I know.
Mary's love language was consumer financing, and she got all warm and fuzzy. My love language is blowing up best, better, good, and trying to get contractors to do proposals a little better way. So now I'm feeling all warm and fuzzy. So I think we're on a good roll. What do you think, Mary?
I couldn't agree more. We have an episode called Breaking Up with Good, Better, Best. And I was feeling like, wow, Stephen must feel so vindicated because I think you said some of these points. But one piece from the survey was that only 10% of contractors are offering 4 or more options. So that means 90% of our listeners out there need to go back to that episode and check that one out. Because
I would agree with that. Yeah. And, having a proposal software, not just writing it out by hand, and one that you can like interact with and say, hey, if you were to add on this IAQ, right? Or if we were to include a service plan with this is what it would cost. And again, that's the way our world works. But absolutely having those 4 or more options bump up our close rates considerably and bump up profitability.
And again, from the survey, those contractors that are offering 4 or more options, their premium equipment mix rose from 26% to 42%.
Yeah,
and when I heard that piece of data, and then coupled with some of the strategies that Stephen has, sort of given us to think about, it makes sense. It makes total sense why the conversation intentionally puts a customer into what they need, what they want, and what's best in class for what they're experiencing. So I think, again, just having the data to kind of back it up, boy, it feels good. It feels good up here.
Yeah, that's good. And I think a lot of contractors, similar to financing, have a lot of preconceived notions. They go into let's say a house, and they say, well, I'm not even going to bring up a 20 SEER because they're not going to buy it, right? But if you don't talk about it, you don't offer it as an option, you don't have a chance to sell it. And also from a psychological standpoint, maybe if you offer that 20 SEER, whatever your top, offering is to the contractor, maybe they'll say, well, I'm not going to go for that, but I'll go for the next best one, right? Rather than if that next best one is that's your best of that good, better, best. So I'm with you, Stephen. I think we need to find a way to get rid of that in our industry, because that is back to the way we've always done things, not necessarily the way that we should.
Can I make a request? And I don't know how to survey for this. So this may be impossible to do, but I mentioned a minute ago, like a lot of our Sandler training is non-industry specific. And so we're collecting research that's done all over the place, applying it to sales, but to some extent there's a challenge of then like saying, but does this apply in our niche of heating and air? So here's my request is I read a couple books. This is probably 15 years ago. One was called The Paradox of Choice. How many choices are too many? How many choices are too few? Good data there from a lot of different sources. The other book was called Priceless, The Myth of Fair Value. And talked a little bit about pricing. And one of the things that I pulled out of both of those books was the concept that the people that spend more money with you, in our industry, that would be the people that buy the higher the product mix, right? They're actually the ones that give you your referrals. And I thought, well, that's really interesting. So I went back and looked at my own data, and I'm so old that when I was selling, our base model was a 13 SEER. And so when I looked at 13 SEER equipment, here's what I did. I pulled all the referrals that I sold in a year. And then I went back to see, well, where did that referral come from? So if TJ was my referral customer and I closed him, I don't necessarily care what TJ bought, although that might be interesting too. But if Mary is the one that referred me to TJ, what I'm really interested in is what did Mary buy? Because whatever Mary bought was good enough that she said to TJ, hey, you should call Steven, right? So when I went and just looked at my own numbers, I had to sell 10 to 15 13 SEER units to get one referral. And then as your product mix moved up, that ratio dropped dramatically to the point where the last year that I was doing full-time sales, I think I had 16 or 18 jobs that were over $30,000. So I kind of had it broken out by price wise. And those 18 jobs gave me like 54 referrals. So instead of having to sell 10 jobs to get one referral, these 18 jobs, almost 3 to 1, were generating all my referrals. So when I go talk to contractors, not only is the getting your product mix up important for profitability, not only is it important to just maximize each opportunity you get, but that's actually your future referrals coming in. TJ, is there any way to validate that in our industry? I mean, it's hard. A contractor has to dig through their own numbers to come to that data, but I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, I do too. I don't have data to back that up, but I would definitely agree with what you're saying. And that, a customer, if they go with a product, a system, a solution that they really think is valuable, right? And they've invested in something that they trust. I think that they've had a better experience and they are more likely to refer, right? Rather than if they just went with the cheapest option, maybe that was the only thing offered them. You say, oh, well, the system, it's going to do the job, but it's not what you could get. And you made another good point, Stephen, that put a light bulb off in my head, is that I think so many contractors just chase volume, right? And I'm going to do as many jobs as I want. It doesn't matter how profitable, what the level of equipment is or whatever. And that contractors should be more strategic in what kind of jobs they're targeting, what they take on. Because like you said, you can do fewer jobs, but if they're higher profitability, you're going to be better off in the future. I'm not a heating and air conditioner contractor, but I wouldn't think that it takes all that much longer to install a high efficient piece of equipment than it does your base. It's not like you're taking all that much more time. So it's a more profitable sale, right? Another thing that I think contractors really struggle with, and we have data to back this up, is with job costing. And so many contractors undersell themselves. They don't understand how to properly cost a job. So we collected some data on our Contractor of the Future study this past fall on how contractors are pricing install jobs versus service jobs. What we found is a lot of contractors are using the multiplier, which is fine. It's an easy way to price both jobs and service, but it really is not the most effective because it does not include all of the operational and overhead costs, especially labor. So what we recommend to contractors, what our Contractor of the Future study comes back with, is a divisor for install jobs is one of the best options because it includes all those overhead costs. It takes into account what your labor cost is as a contractor. And then on service, you can use the divisor, but flat rate pricing is a huge benefit that not enough contractors utilize. Really helps the contractor get to profitability and get to a point where they are charging their customer for their value, for their experience, for their expertise, and not just for that individual job. So, I encourage contractors to really take a look at their job costing, how they're pricing for jobs, what methodologies they're using, and to get to a more profitable state, because that is a huge challenge in our industry. And too many contractors undersell and underprice themselves, again, just assuming that a customer won't pay a certain amount.
I think that's true. And one thing that I really took away from listening to your survey results was there are so many tools now at a contractor's disposal to help them with this proposal piece. And these tools can take into account flat rate pricing for service versus a different kind of pricing for installs. And that was something that I think it's sometimes when I speak about the difficulty of things, I refer to different levels. But it's kind of like a level 2, but it's really something that you'd be well worth investing time to master in, because again, it's going to lead to higher mix and premium equipment, more profitability. And I think in the survey you mentioned something about margins as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Increased margins as well. Yeah, pricing can certainly help with that. I know one of the episodes that you guys did that I watched and really enjoyed was with Tommy Q from JB Warranties, who's a good friend of mine, and love JB Warranties. And that's another way to increase margins is value adds and offerings like extended labor warranties. But you mentioned, Mary, about so many tools now that contractors have at their disposal, and whether it's a field service management software or an individual separate proposal software, flat rate pricing, there's so many good providers for that. We need to get more contractors that get on board with one of those, but even more so when they sign up for one of these technological tool softwares, is fully utilizing it. I can't tell you how many contractors I talk to that have a field service management software that have no idea that flat rate pricing is available through it, or have no idea that they can do all their proposals in it. And basically they're paying all this money and utilizing it as a glorified QuickBooks, right? They invoice out of it, maybe they schedule, but there's a lot of these offerings that have marketing in it, that have purchasing, that have sales proposals, flat rate pricing. So I think, to me, the product and technical side of the heating and air industry is fascinating to me, but double so is the business side of it. And contractors really need to look at, how can I manage my business better? How can I be more efficient, more profitable, so that I can invest back into my business? I talked about earlier that contractors that invest back in their business at least 12% of their sales revenue, annual sales revenue, to marketing and advertising, lead towards more of that plus 10 at the end of the year net profit, whereas the industry average is plus 6, right? So being able to take that money and say, hey, we're going to go out and put more into our brand so that we can not only get referrals through the great jobs that we're doing, but also get people calling us. And there's a lot of different ways to do that and track that as well.
I got a question. Mary, this is for you. Are you ready?
Oh, okay.
All right. So I'm going to take everything TJ just said, and let's pretend, TJ's results are, hey, what are the best contractors doing? Let's assume I'm not one of the best contractors. I'm a mediocre contractor. I'm middle of the pack, right? So let's say my average ticket on an install is $10,000. My product mix is pretty low, meaning most of what I sell is 14 SEER single stage type equipment. And as TJ says, my average net profit at the end of the year is 6%. And so if I take everything TJ just said, which is, hey, you should bump your marketing up from the 5% you're selling now to 12%. He's saying, hey, you should get some proposal software to make sure you're given good estimates that look good, and you're given 4 options. You should roll in your consumer financing, of which the dealer fee is going to range on average 5, 10, 15%. And you should sign up for some field service management, which I know I spent probably 60 grand on the last year that I was a business owner, right? So there's a substantial increase. And so now, instead of having a $10,000 ticket, to build all that in as a business owner, I'm going to have a $15,000 ticket, which makes it harder to sell. But what TJ just said is your closing ratio is going to go up, right? From 38% to about 49%. And instead of you're making 6%, you're actually going to make more like 10%. So here's the question, Mary. How does that work? That sounds like magic.
I was going to say it's a little Mickey Mouse thing called magic. But seriously, first of all, how is that going to work? Well, it's going to take a little bit of time, and that's maybe even too light. It's going to take a lot of time and a lot of investment. And I'm going to say something that's very controversial. It might take time outside of the hours of 8 to 5. I mean, that's just how it is, right? And any sales rep worth their salt is working at this craft out of the hours of 8 to 5. And that's just learning up on products and learning how your products work, doing more trainings on your FSM. I know a lot of webinars are offered during office hours. Guess what? They all get recorded. You can watch all of them at a later time when the phone isn't ringing and when you can take a little bit more of that information in. So you're going to have to put in some time. You might have to hire some resources, which I know maybe some people are thinking like, great, Mary, that's another expense. Yeah, it might be. But you know what is a great use of resources, especially if you're looking for maybe affordable resources, internships, friends and family who are looking for some experience. There's so many people out there who, given, a little bit of direction, could likely help you out in your business to achieve some of these goals. So I would say, how is it going to happen? Well, it's going to happen with some time. It's going to happen with some investment. And maybe even more philosophical than that, you have to believe that it's going to work. You have to buy in and say, I'm doing these things for a reason and I want it to be better. I want to grow. I want to make more money. I want to be able to, buy, well, I was just going to say buy a cool car, but on our SBA episode, we talked about how that could be dangerous. So, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you agree?
Yeah, it is hard. I think it's hard to wrap your mind around. I mean, I think the other comment that sometimes I'll hear is, "Hey, I've got this cheaper brand of equipment, and if I sell that, then my price is lower, which makes it more affordable for homeowners versus selling a premium brand of equipment like Train, where now the price to the homeowner is going to be higher." And so sometimes the dealer will say to me, "I don't understand how that makes sense. It's now going to make me more expensive." And I say, yeah, guess why I did it as a business owner? I did it to make more money. I'm not going to make less money selling a premium product. I'm going to make more money selling a premium product. And that is the challenge is, I think I like what you said. I like your answer, Mary. I didn't know what you were going to say, but like, it takes time. You can't do it all at once. I mean, but you're improving your business. Does the price go up? Yes. Does the value to the homeowner go up though? Yes. And I think that's the mental leap is if we as contractors think that the only value we provide to homeowners is sticking a piece of equipment in their house, if that's the only place your value comes from, well, then you can't raise your price at all. But if your value comes from amazing customer service and making sure people are happy and they can afford what you're selling and you're not breaking the bank and not taking every single penny out of their savings account and like all those types of things, and you're training your employees so that people that show up know what they're doing and so on, that's a better value to the homeowner. So therefore, homeowners are willing to spend more money on it. It's a belief system change, and it takes a while to implement. I mean, I like what you said. TJ, what have we not asked you about that we should have asked you about and just forgot?
Wow. That's a loaded question, but before I get to that, I had a couple thoughts. I thought with Mary, I liked Mary's answer equally as much, but a couple things popped in my mind. One is service, I think is often overlooked, but can be really helpful in improving profitability, is when you're selling these replacement or new installs is to get the service after it, because that's repeat business. And another thing is diversifying your business. And I'm not talking about going from HVAC to roofing or electrical or anything like that. But if you're a contractor that has always only done residential, why not try your hand in a little bit of light commercial, right? That could be a very profitable business as well. And I'm not talking about going and doing major rooftop units on hospitals or something like that, but you go throughout your community and restaurants that you eat at, the church that you go to, small retail shops, all of those places have heating and air too, right? And it's not that much of a step up from the residential work that you're doing. There might be a little less competition. It could be very profitable as well. So I've seen a lot of contractors that have had success in branching out a little bit as well. And I know I kind of put down plumbing beforehand, but I'm seeing a lot of HVAC contractors that are branching out into other verticals, even if it's as simple as getting into water heaters. As a homeowner, consumer, a lot of those customers, they want to deal with fewer contractors, home service people. So if you can provide multiple service other than just heating and air, which is great, but if you can, you're going to provide that much more value and have opportunities as well. So what didn't you ask me? There's a lot of different directions I could go in. I would go back to education, that contractors need to really take that seriously. Network themselves with other contractors. Mary said about it's going to take time is, find a contractor that you don't directly compete against that you want to become, right? And try to find out, how did they get there? Because I guarantee you they didn't just snap their fingers one day and they went from, a small, or as you say, Stephen, an average contractor to that high performing plus 10% at the end of the year, being able to invest in their business. Network, but also educate yourself and your people. And I think so many contractors get bogged down in the product and technical side part of our business, which is important. We have to know about installation, troubleshooting, A2L, all that stuff for sure. But there's another part of being a contractor, and that is managing people, uh, hiring, creating and understanding financial statements. We talked about job costing. We talked about financing, warranties. There's so many things that contractors can do from a business management standpoint that's going to make them more efficient, more profitable, add value to their customers that in the end will help them grow as well.
So the study that we keep referencing today is the Contractor of the Future study, which when you say that to me, like an image of Rosie the robot from the Jetsons pops in my head, and like I'm like, is the Contractor of the Future a robot? But one thing that seems to go hand in hand with future conversations is AI. And we're hearing a lot about how you can use AI in your business. And I'll say, even for myself as a salesperson, I've kind of struggled on when to go to AI and what to use AI for. More and more use cases come up every single day, and I'm starting to see more benefits, but even that for me has been a little bit of a slow on ramp. Any insights on AI with contractors that you're seeing now?
Yeah. So adoption levels are pretty slow. So according to our study, a third of contractors have adopted some form of AI into their business. I think for a lot of contractors, they want to get started but don't know where, and it's kind of scary for them, right? Because it's new. And so there's a lot of different ways that contractors can implement AI into their business, whether it's in inbound phone answering, or it's technician summaries, or it's customer writes a review on Google and an automated response to that review, right? Lead follow up, chatbots internally, externally, vehicle routing and dispatching. There's so many different ways, automation and AI wise, that contractors can implement into their business. I think for contractors, it's finding out what in their business do they want to make more efficient and automate. Where are they spending a lot of unnecessary time that is taking away from them being able to go out and sell or market themselves, and finding out where there is. But I think another challenge with AI is there's you talk about change. Every day it seems like there's a new provider that comes out. So weeding through what's real, what's not, what's good for my business, what's not, that could be a challenge. I think that's where it comes back to networking, talking to other contractors and what they've done. But there are a lot of non-majorly expensive, not $60,000 like Steven said for the SFM software, that you can implement in your business to utilize AI and to automate several processes.
Nice, nice.
I
So
like the idea.
where
I like the idea that you would maybe hack, which process I want to improve first before implementing just straight AI. I think that's a really, really good pro tip, not just for AI evaluation, but maybe any evaluation, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I could see a contractor who maybe isn't on that contractor of the future level that I'm talking about, listening to this or maybe some of your other podcasts and being like, I'm so far away from that, I'm never going to get to it. But like with anything, it's taking bite sizes out, right? So maybe this quarter or this year, you're going to attack the financing, and you're going to say, I'm going to get my people energized and talking about financing, and we're going to offer financing on every job. And then maybe once you get that accomplished, maybe then it's getting into AI or looking at your pricing strategies or market, whatever it may be. I don't think that any contractor is going to be able to accomplish all this at once. That's why it's called contractor of the future, right? It's not just, right now. But our industry will continue to adapt and change. There will be other things that will hit us that will be challenging. And so, contractors need to adapt. They need to be forward thinking. They need to be investing in their business.
I have maybe a weird question, but when contractors are answering your survey, how truthful are they?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah. So for the most part, I don't think that they would have any reason to lie other than when it comes to maybe the financial metrics. Now, it is anonymous. So, I mean, me and my team are the only ones that see it because we're not doing it for, anyone. It's like I said, we partner with a contractor association on it, but even they don't see the individual responses. So really there's no reason for the contractors to lie on it. But yeah, I could see a contractor saying, well, I only made 5%, but I'm going to say I made 7 just to make it look good. But I will tell you this, when I saw that the net profit reported by the average contractor was at +6, I could believe that based on other data that we've said and industry, research that we've done. It should be higher. I hope that maybe 5 years from now it will be higher. It better be. But yeah, that would be my best way to answer that.
No, that's super fair. That's a kind of a tough one. There's so many great pieces of information from the survey, and I don't want to give them all away here, but there were a couple that even made me kind of scratch my head and go, I wonder if that's really real. But what's my total bias on that is that there's other pieces of information that I'm like, that's so real. I've been saying that for years. So I'm my own worst. I'm my own worst critic on that.
Let's say if somebody's listening, TJ, and they're like, I want to get my hands on that survey. What's the best way for them to do it?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can reach out to me. They can go to our website, farmingtonconsulting.net, get our contact information, reach out, and be happy to pass that along. Like I said, I presented a lot of different industry conferences, events, distributor and manufacturer meetings as well, this information. But yeah, I'd be happy to pass that along for sure.
Nice.
I think maybe one of the best feelings that I get from my job is when I see somebody make the changes in a positive way on the notes that we've been talking about, and I see it impact their business in a positive way. Maybe they're able to add 2 more trucks to the fleet and they're all wrapped and they look great, and they did that. They were able to afford that because they sold more jobs, because maybe they did a more promotional, attractive promotion and financing. Whenever I see those little pieces start to kind of come into roll into the bigger snowball, I just get so excited because it is one step at a time. It would be such a bear to take all of this advice tomorrow and go implement all of it, but one positive piece leads to the next. And I can't thank you enough for putting together all of this information. And I really do feel like you're kind of a celebrity. So this was so fun.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm unique and I'm a celebrity. I'll take that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hard to replace. Good deal.
Yep.
Steven, anything else on your end?
That's it for me. Great episode, TJ. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Amazing. Well, if you have any questions for TJ that you'd like to follow up, rewind, get his contact info, or shoot us an email at HVAC_full_blast@traintechnologies.com, and we will get those over to him. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will catch you on the next one.